We're going to start with the #2 Democrat in the Senate, Dick Durbin. He's a senior member of the Judiciary Committee. And Senator Durbin, I want to begin where what John Carl was talking about. He said he's spoken with Democratic strategists to say you all have no procedural silver bullet to take this beyond the election. Is that true?
That's true. And there have been two Republicans who've spoken out already, Senators Murkowski and Collins, that said they won't support this procedure before the election. If two others decide during the course of the debate to stand up and take the same position, then we could have a different timing, perhaps a different outcome.
But what I read a piece by Adam Gentleson, who was a top staffer for Harry Reid, earlier this week. He suggested Democrats could gum up works in the Senate. They could systematically deny unanimous consent to meet. They could have a series of quorum calls. That's not good enough?
I know Adam, I like Adam and respect him, but he's wrong. We could slow it down, perhaps a matter of hours, maybe days at the most, but we can't stop the outcome. What we should do is to address this now respectfully, but understand the context, George. Senator Mitch McConnell, who could find no time to attend the negotiating on the coronavirus relief package that we need to put together for the pandemic facing our country, for the unemployed people, for the businesses, Senator McConnell refused to attend those meetings, didn't have the time to do it. And yet when this vacancy occurred, he dropped everything. Now we're going hell-bent on getting this done before the election. And the second thing, of course, he had to reverse the position he took 4 years ago, saying that we should wait for the next president to fill the vacancy. And then watch as his caucus marched in one after the other, looked down at their shoes and said, we've changed our mind too. We now agree with Senator McConnell.
Some are calling on Democrats to boycott the committee proceedings. Several of your colleagues on the Judiciary Committee have said they won't meet with Judge Barrett. Will you meet with her? Will you participate in the hearings?
I've met with every Supreme Court nominee since I've been in the Senate. I will extend that courtesy if she requests it for at least a socially distanced, safe meeting, perhaps over the phone. I want to be respectful. We disagree on some things. And in terms of participating in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, I'll be there to do my job because I want to ask her point blank, as I'm sure others will, whether or not her position is that we should end the Affordable Care Act, providing health insurance for 20 million Americans and protections for Americans from one coast to the other from pre-existing conditions being used against them when they buy health insurance. These are fundamental questions, no more important now in any time to pass, important at this moment because of the pandemic that we face. There are many other questions, but let's start with that.
So many believe this is an illegitimate sham process. That's what several of your colleagues have said. If it's an illegitimate process, why legitimate it with your participation?
I have a job to do, George. It is likely that this nominee, the Republicans have promised even before her name was announced that they were going to vote for the president's choice. We're talking about someone who will be on the highest court in the land for the remainder of her life. And I take that seriously. I think questions I've mentioned earlier about the future of health care in the midst of a pandemic and what this would mean to families. She's been pretty explicit in criticizing Justice Roberts when it came to the opinion he wrote in NFIB versus Sebelius. But now we have a new question brought to us by the president, and that is the legitimacy of the election and whether this president, the first in the history of this country, who would not declare that he would accept the verdict of the American people on the future leadership in the White House. He said he wants that court to be full. He wants 9 members there. And obviously the inference is he's going to need some supporters if there's an election contest.
Here's what the president said on that subject.
I think it's better if you go before the election because I think this scam that the Democrats are pulling, it's a scam. This scam will be before the United States Supreme Court. And I think having a 4-4 situation is not a good situation.
Given those repeated comments by the president, will you and other Democrats request that Judge Barrett recuse herself from any consideration of the election?
I certainly wish she would. It would really help Mathers, and it would evidence the fact that she wants to be fair in addressing this. Why? Because this president has been outspoken and outrageous. to think that he would not accept the verdict of the election and that he would make it clear that he's filling this vacancy in the Supreme Court to make sure it tips his way if there's any election contest. That is an outrage. No president has ever said that in our nation's history. He said it twice. He said it 4 years ago. Now he's saying the Supreme Court is part of his plan this time. I think that she should step forward and say that she will recuse herself from any election contest involving this president.
And if she doesn't?
Well, the votes will be cast ultimately on her nomination. Each senator will have to make that decision after they hear her testimony.
You mentioned the president's refusal to accept a peaceful transition of power, or say that he would abide by a peaceful transition of power. Last week, Senator Ted Cruz was on this program, and he and others have drawn a moral equivalence between what the president is saying and these comments from Hillary Clinton. Let's take a look.
Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances, because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch, and if we are as focused and relentless as the other side is.
Do you agree with those comments?
No, I don't. I disagree with Hillary Clinton. I respect her, I like her, but I think she's just flat out wrong. The election itself is going to be announced. The winner will be announced at some point. It'll take longer with all the paper ballots that are being cast. But at some point, I hope my choice, Joe Biden, is elected president. But if we are going to maintain a democracy, peaceful transition through an election is the only way to do it. Just look at the streets of Belarus today if you want to see the alternative. We don't need that in America. Whoever the winner is, if it is clear and legal, that should be announced and the other party should concede.
Are you convinced it's going to be a fair election?
I hope so, George, but we have so much meddling going on here. We have the Russians still at work, the Chinese, perhaps the Iranians, and others. We certainly have conspiracy theorists in this country. We have what I consider to be a corruption of the media. To think that we are broadcasting through social media things which are truly false is really misleading the American people. We need and should have a much better approach to this than we currently do, and I worry about the outcome.
Finally, if Democrats are successful in November and you increase your numbers in the Senate, your colleague Ed Markey has suggested that if Republicans confirm Judge Barrett, you should end the filibuster and expand the Supreme Court. Is that on the table?
Well, I could say the conversation about the future of the Senate rules is on the table, and I'm part of it. And the reason is this. We have seen under Mitch McConnell the destruction, denigration of the United States Senate. George, last year in the Senate, 2019, we had 22 amendments voted on in the entire year in the United States Senate. Mitch McConnell has taken the Senate and turned it into something that is not even close to a deliberative and legislative body. We need to make sure that whatever the procedure is in the future, that we get down to business, roll up our sleeves and address the issues that affect this country. Senator McConnell's approach, I think, has been a failure.
Senator Durbin, thanks very much for your time this morning. Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.